our farmers are right for crying foul for this policy, because the impact of the policy will mean that the local production will be put in reverse gear as a result of this policy of government. Local production will be put in reverse gear, and our farmers will be negatively affected. Because for now, farmers get agricultural inputs such as fertilizers, chemicals, herbicides, pesticides, and other necessary agricultural inputs at exorbitant prices because of the problem of the exchange rate, the naira to dollar exchange rate. Naira has fallen so significantly. The purchasing power of our farmers has been taken away as a result of this development. Agricultural inputs are very expensive in the market, and farmers have been purchasing these agricultural inputs to put their crops on the feed. The crops are still on the feed now, and then government is going to provide waiver. It's going to lift customs duties and bring in food from other countries. And when these food items come in, the prices of food in the market will crash. And farmers that have bought very expensive agricultural inputs to produce their own crops, they will have to take these crops to the same market where subsidized imported food items are being sold. The economic implication of this to the farmers will be that they may have to sell their own produce at a loss. And that, to me, is a disincentive to local production. I would rather think, actually, I will agree that we need to provide food at all costs. We have to solve the problem of food inflation in this country first and foremost. So that's why we support this step of the government. But on the long run, it's more important to make sure that all these other agricultural inputs that are so expensive now are also subsidized. That custom duties and waivers are provided over all these other agricultural inputs so as to stimulate local production of food in our country.
Okay, I hear you talk about stimulation of the economy and the fact that maybe this is what is needed at this very moment in order for us to turn the effects of inflation. But I wanted to ask you, really, do you think suspension of the waiver is better than putting it permanent? Because if you suspend it, just like you mentioned, somebody can just, buy as much as possible and stock in a warehouse, and then maybe after 1-2 years they are back to normal. So I'm thinking whether you think that this policy of just suspending with an intent to return back the waiver would make sense in the short term or in the long term.
But my brother, I'd like you to know that this step of government to suspend a waiver of import duties on food items is a step to placate the angry Nigerians who are protesting now. It is not a well-thought-out policy of government, because if it is, government ought to have done taking this step before announcing the removal of fuel subsidy. This ought to be one of the steps that government should have taken. What led us to this quagmire that in which we are now, this over-the-roof inflation, is because of the removal of fuel subsidy without any tangible preparation to curb what the consequences. Got to know what the consequences of that policy of removal of fuel subsidy will be. So they went ahead and removed fuel subsidy without putting any plans in place. Now that the protesters are on the streets, government is now quickly saying, oh, let us take away let's waive import duties for a window of 150 days, just about 6 months, 150 to 180 days, just about 6 months. What will happen after that? In my opinion, if the government is going to permanently waive import duties on food items, they need to stimulate local production by waiving the same import duties on important agricultural inputs like fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, and other inputs that farmers need so that we can stimulate local food production. When local food production is stimulated and farmers are able to produce, to reduce their cost of production significantly, then imported food and locally produced food can sell at the same low price, at the same low price or low prices in the market. Then the benefit of this policy can go round. But what we need to be thinking about now is, after these 6 months that this law will be suspended, what is going to happen in our country? What will happen? I hope that within this period of time, that government will be able to put in enough, measures that will ensure that local food production is stimulated. That is the solution to the problem that we are facing. It's not really about bringing in food that we can produce in our own country. The food items they listed that we're spending import duties on are maize, wheat, and rice. These three crops, we can produce them in our country. So we need to stimulate local production by bringing down the cost of agricultural inputs. Thank you.
Okay, so part of what has happened in the last few months, because before now, food prices, you could say, were manageable. But since the removal of fuel subsidy on May 29, 2023, up until this moment, we've seen food prices skyrocket. Many of the food vendors say transportation is a huge part of their cost of production. How much of transportation do you think, in terms of cost, is affecting food prices? Do you think even if we remove or suspend the import waiver, it would in any way affect the prices of food in the market, given that the cost of transportation is still very high?
That is another angle to it. When you look at the entire food production value chain, from acquisition of seed, or which is the planting proper goods, to the very last point that the farmers will harvest the produce, do post-harvesting processes, and get the food through the stores back to the market, where the ultimate consumers will have access to the food produce, to the food materials, the items. Transportation is involved, and at every stage of it. You have to leave your farm place to go and get your seed. You have to transport the seed back to your village. You have to get tractors, motorized implements to prepare your field. You have to take the labor from wherever they are staying to your field to cultivate for you. Transportation is involved. So at the end of the day, you find out that the cost of transportation in the production cost, overall production cost, will be close to 50%, if not more, if you are going to add everything cumulatively now. So I think this waiver of import duties is just a short-term solution to a perennial problem. The problem of food inflation will become perennial. It's going to be year over year over year if care is not taken. If government does not do something significant, something big about the fuel situation in the country. For as long as we are buying fuel at which we buy fuel now, I don't think there can be any solution in sight to food crisis, because a 6-month window of lifting of import duties will not provide, it's not a long-term solution to the food crisis we have in this country. Our economy runs on fuel. Our economy runs, we are running a petrol economy. So it is important, if government wants the masses of the country to have some respite, they must do something about the fuel situation in the country. We cannot continue like this.
I mean, you would think that the president has so many people who are advising him, and ones who are also looking at the time at which the food prices started rising rapidly, and it's back to the cost of transportation. Of course, the removal of fuel subsidy that's making a lot of people buy fuel as high as 800, 850, and even some places 1,200. Even the suspension of the waiver might not even, just as you have said, might not even impact on the cost of food. So where do we go from here? Because again, we don't want a situation where when this suspension is made, it now starts impacts on other aspects, because of course the farmers in the country are already crying that doing that would affect them, and they might not be able to compete, and maybe they'll start closing shop. I mean, you're in a situation imported food will be quite cheaper than even locally made food. How much of that do you think would impact on competitiveness?
You have put it in a very clear manner. We have a complex situation now. We have a really complex situation outside of the farmers agitating against this policy about duties being waived, and then government bringing in imported food. But also, I'm on the side of the masses, that in order for us to stimulate this economy that is at best in the comatose, in order for us to stimulate this economy, we must revive the already battered farm capital. People must eat in order for them to go back to the farm and do the job. There must be food to eat. Yoruba adage will say that fried meat, the fried dog is very sweet, it's very delicious. But you eat something before you are able to fry the dog and make it firm enough for you to eat. You know that the dog flesh is full of fat, so it takes a lot of effort for you to fry it and put it in a state that you can eat it. So before you go through that effort, you'll be eating something first. So before we can get to the man, and before the farmers, we go back to the farm and be able to work properly and stimulate local production of food and be able to produce, there must be something to eat. That is why I think in order for government to placate the protesting masses of the country, they have to do what they are doing now. But the long-term solution is to stimulate local food production, so that what the farmers will be producing, as you rightly use that word, will become competitive with what will be brought in from the country. What will be brought in will not be cheaper than what the local farmers are producing. If what local farmers are producing is more expensive, nobody will buy them. And then we are then going to be killing our own economy indirectly by bringing in food countries. That means that you are sending jobs indirectly to those other countries where the food is coming from, because you are supporting the employment of those countries where you are importing the food from, and you are killing your own economy. So if care is not taken, if this policy is sustained on the long run, it is going to kill local food production in our country. So the factors that is directly affecting local food production for now is the removal of in the government is saying that fuel subsidy removal will remain But I now ask this question. Is governance about grandstanding? Is governance not about the well-being of the people? If the policy, a policy of government is killing the economy, if the policy of government is affecting people in a very negative manner, the way we see the removal of fuel subsidy now, what is bad if the government thinks of a very smart, innovative way of reversing policy? We even hear now that fuel subsidy has been returned through the back door. We don't know who is saying the truth any longer. This country is so complicated. You can't even know who is telling the truth. What we get to know now is that even the fuel subsidy is back indirectly. Yet, we are buying a liter of petrol at an average of 850 naira at the pump station. Government must think very deeply about this fuel subsidy. There must be something that government can do so that the price of petroleum products, can come down. Transportation costs can go down. Local food production can then be stimulated. Then everything will balance. We kind of be balanced. If now sustain waiver removal of waiver on import duties on the long term, and local production is stimulated, farmers will be able to produce food, and then they will get it sold in the market competitively.
Right. At a time when we're talking about finance, government saying there isn't no monies for them to be able to actualize their goal of infrastructural development, one wonders the extent of the impact on the revenue for government if waivers are actually implemented. Another aspect is the fact that even the production within the country, we've seen how drastically reduced that has actually become because of the farmers' headers clash. Yes, maybe we haven't heard a lot of that lately, but how much of that do you think has affected our food production in the past and most recently?
Paucity of money in the hands of government is as a result of misplaced priorities. Where in the world will a government with a struggling economy allocate 150 million naira to buy an SUV for a serving senator? Where in the world do they do that? In my university, our vice chancellor took a bold step of acquiring a new tractor for my faculty just last year. He bought that new tractor at the cost of 23 million naira. And that has significantly enhanced our farming activities in the university. Which means that the Prado, or whatever name they call that vehicle, that the government has bought for each senator at the rate of at the cost of 150 million, would have bought how many of that? More than five of the new tractors that our vice chancellor bought for the university. Multiply that by the number 5 tractors, by the number of senators that we have in this country. I think we have a minimum of, an average of 100. 100 multiplied by 5. That would be 500 new tractors. If we bring in 500 new tractors into this country, remember, before you can become a senator in this country, you have a fleet of cars in your garage. It's not as if they really need these cars. If you have used that money to purchase 500 new tractors into this country today, can you imagine the impact that 500 new tractors will make on our farming activities? A small country in the Sahel, Burkina Faso, the president, Captain Ibrahim Traore, when he took office, he went and he bought 400 new tractors. And he came on a global platform and said that the youth of Burkina the youth of Burkina Faso should come and get the tractors free of charge to prepare their land and cultivate food. That is leadership. That is real leadership. But here we have a misplaced priority. Do you know that the fuel that we are, the crude oil that we are even talking about, you know the percentage, the proportion of the crude oil that end up in the private purses of, or in the purses of private citizens of this country, politicians, business people, big people in this country. So we have a lot of things to talk about when it comes to revenue. Government must block all these leakages where money is being siphoned away from the covers of government. Government must reduce the cost of governance in this country. When you look around the world, Nigeria runs one of the most expensive governments in the whole world. The few politicians that we have in the offices, they take so much and they leave the masses with just crumbles. We need to reverse this trend. And then when we now talk about, I think for me, that is one area that is affecting revenue significantly. It is onto government to do what is right. It is onto government to set their priorities right when it comes to spending, when it comes to allocation of scarce resources. The waivers of import duties for 6 months, to me, will not in any way hurt this government revenue. What are they doing with what they have already? I didn't know this. Is the money, is the impact of the wealth of this country getting to the masses? I think by what is going on in our cities now, in our towns, with this protest that is going on, the answer to that question is no. The impact of governance is not getting to the people as of now. This government needs to wake up and do better.
Okay, it's quite interesting how you put it. I mean, linking the cost of governance into what we are facing as a country. Food scarcity is imminent. I'm just wondering, most people are no longer going to the farms because of what they have faced with the farmers' headers.
Thank you. I missed that. Let me clearly respond to that. The herders, farmers conflict is a lot of issue. In my university, we practice practical agriculture in Ajayi Crowther University. We that are lecturers, professors, senior lecturers, all of us, we go to the field, run trials, we run research, we do production. So we have interface.
Okay, Mr. Moses. Mr. Moses, it seems we may have a disconnected with Mr. Moses, giving us an insight into this latest developments as it concerns the waiver suspension by the federal government in order to impact on the prices of goods and services. Mr. Moses, have you joined us again?
Oh, yes. Can you hear me now?
Okay, continue.
Hello. I was saying that in our university, in Ajayi Crowther University here, we are practical farmers. We are not desk lecturers, as to office lecturers. We go to the field, we run experiments, research, and we also do production. We produce all kind of crops. So we have these herders, farmers crisis from time to time, because we get to the field and realize that a chunk of our feed has been carted away or eaten up by the cattle of these herdsmen. So we have the experience, first-hand experience. And the conversation now is, what is the role of government in the first place? Is it not to protect the lives and properties of the citizens? Why should this problem become a perennial problem? Why should this problem continue to linger? Is there nothing government can do to curb this menace that the Fulani men are causing to our own enterprise? Remember, This cattle is a business for some people. And the other guys who are doing their own business by farming, the other people doing their own business to bring the cattle and hit up the other people's business. And our country seems we less bothered, less perturbed about this. They leave the farmers at the mercies of Fulani herdsmen that are harmed, dangerously harmed. What then is the role of government? I want to put it to the table of the government that they need to wake up to the responsibility of governance by protecting the lives and the properties of the citizens. If we are going to charge anybody to court, whenever there is a herders-farmers conflict that leads to death and destruction of crops, honestly, we should be empowered to charge our government to court. Government should begin to pay for the crops that are damaged and should begin to pay to the families of the people that have been killed. But we are helpless kind of citizens in our fatherland. The government holds all the powers. Otherwise, all our government should be in jail by now because they are not doing what they are voted in to do, what they are supposed to be doing, they are not doing it. By allowing herdsmen, farmers, conflicts to continue to fester in our country. We still need to take it back to the government. It's a wake-up call to government this morning that they need to do more to protect the lives, properties, and the investments of the farmers of this country.
Okay, Professor, thank you so much for wrapping things off. I mean, it's a complex situation that we're faced right now. I do not know if you were to advise the president on what to do right now as regards this issue in just 3 sentences, what would you be telling the president?
Thank you very much. Kudos to the government, to Mr. President, His Excellency, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for at least listening to the yearnings of the protesters by providing some succor in form of the waiver of import duties on food items. I will ask the government to provide the same waiver for the important agricultural inputs, which will stimulate local food production in Nigeria. Inputs like fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, and other important agro inputs that we need. Number 3, I will tell our government to think innovatively about addressing fuel subsidy removal. When the policy is not working, government should have courage to do something about a policy that is hurting its masses. Our government should be a little more compassionate by ensuring that whatever it is they do to bring down the cost of transportation is done as a matter of urgency. Nigerians are hurting very badly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Moses Adeolu, all the way from the Ajayi Crowther University. I understand that you are the Dean of Agriculture in that university. It's amazing speaking with you. Thank you for providing insights into some of these issues. We truly appreciate you.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure being on Signature TV this morning. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. The morning show continues after this. To stay with us.